Hi, welcome to my top 3 career pivot tips. My name is Tim Nash. I'm your host, and with me today is Sonia Allinson-Penny. So first of all, Sonia, welcome. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome, Tim. It's a pleasure.
And you are based in rural France now. I'm curious. The weather in Munich, where I'm based, is sort of, there's some clouds. It's been sort of nice, but kind of rain here and there. What's it like where you are?
We're literally just coming out of that sort of spring weather where it's a real change into weeks and weeks of sun start as of tomorrow.
As of tomorrow, are you being optimistic or do you have something to base that on?
No, that's definitely looking at AccuWeather. It's going to happen.
Okay, right. Well, Sonia, thanks for being here again. And just for the audience, you might be interested to know that I've known Sonia for a few years, but our relationship has changed quite a bit actually over the years, which it started out as, I was a client of Sonia's. You hired me to help with a storytelling course in your former position as a senior HR manager, and I worked with your team. And then you pivoted from that job to another large corporate, and I worked with you again and your new team over there. But then I think it was last year, correct me if I'm wrong, Sonia, you made a big pivot out of a full-time corporate work into sort of, let's say, my world, which was just working for yourself and being a solopreneur. This is quite a big pivot, and our relationship changed as a result. Before, where as we sort of had this client, let's say, corporate relationship, now we're sort of on the same level. So that's been an interesting development to me. And anyway, I'm happy and proud to call you a friend and a peer. So I guess we can start out by maybe you could tell us a little bit about that pivot that I'm referring to, from that full-time corporate work into doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, actually, it's been 2 years.
Has it been 2 years now?
Right now, yeah.
Wow.
Amazing how time flies. I think that's probably one of the first things to say, that it's just gone incredibly fast. And if I'm really honest, I feel really, really fortunate to have had that experience. So it was a little bit daunting to start off with, but now, always with the benefit of hindsight, looking 2 years back, best thing I ever did. I'm really pleased that I took the plunge.
Okay, so when you say take the plunge, that sounds quite dramatic. Tell us a little bit about that plunge. So again, you were a senior HR manager for 2 big corporates that I'm aware of. Maybe there were more before that, but that was a very sort of high-profile job. And again, you've gone to working for yourself. So tell us a little bit. Why do you refer to it as a plunge?
Yeah, that's a good question, because one of the tips that I want to give is the fact that you need to know when to take the calculated risk. And so when I say take the plunge, it may feel as if I made a spur-of-the-moment decision, but actually I didn't. But you may have grand plans, but taking the plunge means moving from thinking about doing something to actually doing it. And I think many of the people in the audience will know, those aren't the same things, and it can be really, really scary to have an idea and to do all the groundwork and feel as if it's probably going to work out, but then actually to do it and to leave the comfort and the safety of full-time permanent work, which I'd known for 25, 30 years, in fact.
Wow.
To then, and my husband's also a freelancer and had been for 5 years. So I knew that it was possible, but when you have 2 people that are freelance, then you never know what life is going to throw at you.
Which bigger plunge.
Is true. Yeah. However, we had been systematically setting up our chosen lifestyle to be able to make that kind of big shift, actually, from certainty of a monthly income to uncertainty.
Yes, absolutely. And that brings me to your top 3 tips. I think there were more than just 3 things that you did to sort of create that situation that you could step into. But what would you say, or let's say, what 3 main tips would you give to the audience people who are thinking about making a pivot, either going from full-time safe steady corporate work to doing something on their own? What would be sort of your top three?
Yeah, I tried not to overthink it too much in advance. And, you know, because often it's best when you just come up with the
Sure.
top of your mind. And when I did think, what would they be? The first thing was know your passion. And really, really understand yourself. And you know, we can go into this in a little bit more detail later about positive psychology, you know, self-reflection, but really understanding what drives you, because we're all unique, and what's my career pivot is maybe not going to be what somebody else's career pivot might be, but the systematic way that I went about it. So know your passion would be the first one. The second one would be put the building blocks in place. So my career pivot didn't happen overnight. So even though it might look as if suddenly I made a dramatic change, and I use the words like take the plunge, up until that point in time, I knew my passion and I was putting the building blocks in place since I was 15, in fact. And the third one is then take the calculated risk. So know your passion, put in place building blocks, but take a calculated risk. So yes, I did take a risk, but I had safety nets in place.
Right. Right, and were those important to you, having those safety nets in place? I'm guessing. I'm guessing they were important to you, but how important were they to you, those safety nets?
It's probably a factor of my personality and my risk profile. That I am a very planned and organized person, but I love having a plan that I can then deviate from. And in a world where we're all being encouraged to be agile, and the word pivot is about a fundamental change. It's important to me to have some security and safety nets in place. And I've been earning a steady income since I was 14. And my parents sent me out to work. They sent me to the town hall to get a work permit as a child, and said it's good and healthy for you to learn that if you want things in life, you have to earn them. So your pocket money stops as of this day. And you go and find a way to buy your clothes or your new shoes or a book that you want. And so I had a very, very strong work ethic from a very young age. And I learned so many lessons from that period. But I was lucky at 15 that I watched a movie that had such an amazing impact on me about autism. I started to look into autism as a career option and realized very quickly that caring professions aren't highly paid. It was also in the 70s where women were being encouraged not to take stereotypical roles. And so I went on to do a business degree. But if I'm really honest, that kind of went against my inner passion and purpose, which was about the caring profession for autistic children. So I volunteered throughout my career with children with all kinds of challenges, because that was just something that really drove me in my spare time. And then used my business degree to build a corporate career, which was really, really satisfying. You know, it gave me a lot of extrinsic motivations, I would say. But the intrinsic motivation comes more from the giving part. So I always knew that at some point in time I would go into that kind of career pivot, which was tapped more into my personal motivations.
Right. So you mentioned autism, which I know that happens to be a passion of yours, working with autistic children, and you know, I would say on one hand, you know, you were blessed that you knew that passion, and that for you was clear from a very young age. So, you know, what tip would you give to somebody who doesn't have sort of that one thing that they, you know, that one passion that just comes out? Maybe they're interested in a few different things, but they're lacking some ideas. They don't really know. What tip would you give to somebody who wasn't so clear what their passion was?
Yeah, and this is something that comes up in my career a lot, and certainly in my current business, and I suspect it comes up in yours as well, Tim. That, you know, people are looking for, how do I find meaning? You know, we know that happiness comes from relationships, it comes from purpose, it comes from meaning, And I see a lot of people who kind of feel a bit guilty that I don't know what my purpose or my passion is. That's absolutely fine. Mine had a label on it, which was called autism. However, that's not the only factor. I didn't know if I would be any good. Did I have the skills or the expertise or the right temperament to actually succeed and to do good in that space? So I still had to do work on myself. I still had to do some self-reflection. I still had to look very intently with a corporate coach that I was given as I was going up in my corporate career. And it was quite hard hitting in terms of being really honest with myself about my value system. And an exercise that she gave me, and I suspect you do similar things in your coaching work, was that I had to first of all come up with all of my values out of a whole set of options that I could choose. And even discarding some words which were written down as values was quite cathartic. But then once I'd chosen my value system, she forced me to rank order them. And that, I'd say that was one of the most difficult exercises I've ever had to do in a self-reflection space. And then it forced me to realize for myself extrinsically that independence was my number one value over and above others which might be more socially acceptable. And there you see that, you know, when you look at the career pivot that I've made, part of that self-development work has helped me to come to the realization that independence is of significant value for me as an individual. And so what I'm doing right now really plays into that value system, but it allows me to follow my passion, which is autism. So it's a whole mix of things. So know yourself, know your passion, do the work, go finding it, with, for instance, a coach like yourself to try and uncover how can I find out more about myself, so that I can then detach from the things that don't matter as much to me, which is maybe noise. Society's telling me I should care about these things, maybe money, materialism, etc. Park that all aside and go on a journey for yourself to figure out what matters to you. We get one life, you know. So it was really important to use your one opportunity.
Absolutely.
To do what matters to you.
That's a great tip. Where you get one shot at this, so make the most of it. Absolutely. And my last question has to do with, I think it was your third tip, to take a calculated risk. Not easy for a lot of people, you know, and I think a lot of people might, you know, in preparation of taking a calculated risk, they might be trying to put those safety nets in place, or the building blocks that you mentioned. You know, you could spend a lifetime doing that, right? And you did spend many years doing that, but I mean, so, you know, I guess the question is, you know, what tip would you give somebody to actually, you know, muster the courage to take that leap of faith, you know, even when they think you could have more of a safety net or a bigger safety net, or, you know, and they didn't quite have all those building blocks. Well, what would be that final sort of inspirational tip to help people really leap?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the honest answer is the safety net is the reason that I could then deploy courage. You know, so the other tip that I would give is, you know, really good cognitive behavioral therapy stuff. What is the worst that could happen? You know, the only thing that is standing, you know, stopping you taking that plunge are your thought processes. You know, it's your anticipated fears that are going to hold you back. So if you really do that know myself thing, and you know, think through what's the worst that could happen, and how likely is that, you know, which we know from resilience training, you know, try and compartmentalize your worst fears, and also feel the fear and do it anyway. But the safety net for someone with my character, enabled me to say the worst thing that could happen, you know, I set up a portfolio of contracts before I left corporate life. So it was like the worst thing that could happen is that all three of those contracts at the same time suddenly poof went away. And so what, you know, the chances of that happening are very limited. And even if they did, I could go back into paid full-time permanent work, right? So it's don't allow your worst fears to play out in your mind. Compartmentalize, break them down, look at the likelihood and the probability, and do it anyway.
And I like that what you said. You know, you can always go back, right? You could have gone back if by chance, very small chance, that all three of those things had fallen out at the same time, you could always have gone back, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, what's the likelihood that your worst fears are going to happen? You know, look at those two things. What are my worst fears? What's the likelihood? Put in place a few contingency plans in case of those things, and then just do it anyway. You know, because you can't control everything in life. Sometimes you do just have to throw it out to the gods, to fate, and say, you know, I have the confidence and the confidence to be able to pivot and to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
Should my grand plan not work out, then it's also okay. It's all right. I had a plan, I tried it, it didn't work.
Yeah.
It's all right. I bounce back, and there'll always be another way.
Yeah. And you know, what I take away from what you just said really is that the most important success factor, or sort of, success factor, I would really say, is that confidence in that I will make this happen. I will get through this, whatever that, even if that means going back or going forward, whatever, but the confidence that you'll make it. You know, I can't think of a better resource than that confidence.
I mean, self-belief, it's one of the things I do a lot in my work, in my professional work, is trying to build up somebody's self-belief. Because I think that is the greatest gift that we have in life. And if somebody takes that away from you, very, very difficult to be able to get it back. So that core resilience, that inner resilience, inner belief is such an amazing asset to have as you go through life, not just a career, not just work. Absolutely. But building up that confidence, you know, the more we can give people that, I think that's the greatest gift that we can give them in life, is that self. Even weather any storm, any material damage that you suffer, if you've got that inner belief. Absolutely.
And you know, you mentioned that the likelihood of all three of those things falling through at the same time was very little. However, you know, there are times in life where, you know, maybe not all three contracts fall out at the same time, but things like COVID-19 happens, or unexpected, unforeseen things where resilience is really your best resource, you know? So
completely agree. I mean, COVID definitely, I mean, for anybody, I think watching today, you know, it's not been good timing for anybody when is a good time for a pandemic.
Right.
But I have to say that there have been opportunities for me, at least, to turn it into an opportunity. So I'll give you one example. What gave me the confidence to make a bit of a leap out of full-time paid corporate work, yes, was having 3 contracts lined up, 2 that I could immediately go into. But it was also the fact that there are a lot of trends in the outside marketplace that I'd been keeping an eye on. And I thought, you know, I want to get involved in the gig economy, digitalization, startup world. There's this whole new exciting thing going on out there that I feel as if I'm being held back from. So I want to learn about the startup world. I think I've got some things to offer, and I also do want to listen and learn. So remote working was starting to become far more common. You know, it wasn't the crazy bizarre idea it might have been 10 years ago.
Or even 1 year ago even.
And now look what's happened. I mean, I happened to make the leap a year before COVID happened. And all of a sudden, it's given my business and my personal learning journey a massive boost.
Sure.
Because a lot of clients are now reaching out to me and saying, you work in the remote space, you know how to do this. And we're so used to coming to the office every day. Can you help us? So I've been building tip sheets for some of my clients, for instance, on how do we do remote. I got asked to tender for a really significant leadership event, which was the first time a not-for-profit had run for 60 people, a virtual workshop, a strategy workshop. And they said, we've got no clue how to do this, but we know that we don't want a year to go by where we don't talk. And all the technology exists for that. And the facilitation skills, you and I have them, exist to be able to do that.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
There have been opportunities that have come from, you know, really, for some very disastrous events. You know, I want to acknowledge that not everybody has had the chance to turn it into an opportunity, but certainly for my career pivot, fate played a hand, and you can see it as a positive, not just a negative.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Sonia, thanks so much for being a guest on my show, and secondly, you know, you're really an example of resilience in action, of positivity and proactivity and resilience in action. So I take you as a great great role model when it comes to surviving the gig economy, and it's not just surviving, but thriving in the gig economy. So I'm happy to have you with me out here in the gig economy.
Well, back at you, Tim.
So thanks again. Yeah, so thanks again, Sonia, and we'll talk again very soon.
Great. Take care. See you, Tim.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.